Hello, welcome to today's museum moment. It is April 28th. This is actually today, April 28th, is the 12th anniversary of Jewish Museum Milwaukee. So happy birthday, Jewish Museum Milwaukee. We are going to pause our celebration of Jewish Museum Milwaukee's birthday till next week when we'll celebrate our Bar Mitzvah year and all of those things. Because today or actually tomorrow starts a bigger birthday than our 12th anniversary. So this week is all about Israel because tomorrow is Yom HaAtzmaut and it is the 72nd anniversary of the creation of the state of Israel. And so when you're a Jewish museum in Milwaukee and you're telling stories about Jewish Milwaukee, there's kind of one story that rises to the top that people are like, yeah, if you're a Jewish museum in Milwaukee, if you don't have this story, then you're not telling the story. And that's the story I'm going to look at this week. It's the story of Golda Meir. Now, I wish that I had figured out polls and stuff on this for you guys, but by comments, how many people in my comments knew that Golda Meir was from Milwaukee? Let me know. And for many people, this is sometimes a surprise. For my younger generation of visitors to the museum, often they say things like, who's Golda Meir? So this becomes a particular joy for me in sharing her story and being able to talk about who she was and her legacy. That makes me pretty happy. And then there are a number of people who are like, of course, Golda Meir, Milwaukee, like the two go together like peanut butter and jelly, if you were into that kind of thing. So today we're talking, and thanks Howard for letting me know that Golda Meir was from Milwaukee. Today, and of course, Robin Cohen, one of my docents, is saying, and she tells every Israeli that she sees, of course, Golda, this is this great connection. So today we're going to start out with Golda's very early life. And we're actually going to start before she's born with her parents. Her father, Moshe, was a skilled carpenter. And he was so skilled, he actually got a permit to have his family inside Kiev, which in order to live in the city proper, you needed some sort of permit if you were Jewish. And he had, demonstrated his skill in some sort of way and had carved something, and voila, they get this permit to live in Kiev. However, he is never a successful carpenter in Kiev. And so the family moves back to Pinsk, where Golda's mother, Bluma, had been from. And the family there is fairly successful because Golda's mother comes from a successful family. Her father owned some sort of small grocery store and is fairly well known in the community and is fairly successful. So they're back in Pinsk hanging out. And at some point when Golda's about 5, her father decides he's going to go to the United States to seek his fortune. He never plans, and this is a difference between Golda's family's immigration story and many other immigration stories. His plan is never that he's going to send back for his family and come and get them. His sense is he's going to make his fortune in America, and then he's going to come back to Pinsk and be the wealthy American in Pinsk. He could finally prove to his father-in-law that he was good for something. So he actually takes people with documentation for his wife and 3 daughters. He has a much older daughter than Golda. She's about 15 when they immigrate. She's 7 years older than Golda. And a younger daughter who is 3 years younger than Golda. Golda's born in 1896. So he leaves, and his sense is he'll be back. And in the 3 years that pass, a lot of things happen. One, there is a pogrom in Pinsk. And for Golda's mother, this is one thing. This is bad. Things are getting bad. There's violence in the street. Golda remembers this. She writes about it in her memoir. The second big turning point is that the oldest daughter, her name is Shana, starts holding radical revolutionary meetings in their house, anti-Tsarist meetings in their house. Now, think about 1905 Russia. Think about what you want to be doing in your household. Do you want to be, countering the Tsar there? So that's 2 strikes. The third strike is that Shana has started doing whatever the 1905 version of dating is with a radical revolutionary. It always takes me back to that scene in Fiddler on the Roof where, they go, he's a radical. He was a radical. His name was Shammai Korngold. And for Golda's mother, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Pogrom, actually holding anti-Tsarist meetings in their house, and the possibility of having a revolutionary son-in-law, that's a bridge too far. So she decides that they're going to go to America as well, and they go on falsified documents because their own papers had already been used by some other family. So it means that when Golda comes to America, she is coming with her mother and her older sister in one grouping of family, and their younger sister has to pretend to be part of another family. That's one thing. Golda also has to, as an 8-year-old, pretend to be a 5-year-old. They take this kind of treacherous journey throughout Europe. They end up taking a steamship from, I think, do I have this on my, I'll have to add that in the comments because right now it's escaping me. The Joys of Live Facebook. So they get on this journey. It's 2 weeks. They're in a second-class cabin that they're sharing as 8 people, second class. Still better, it means they don't get inspected off the boat, they get inspected on the boat. The one thing Golda writes about again in her memoir is that everyone in her group had seasickness except for her. So I just imagine young 8-year-old Golda wandering this boat left and right just to avoid all of the seasick people in her cabin. They get to America by way of Canada, and they arrive in Milwaukee where Golda's father had come, probably, we think, on some sort of exchange like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. He had been placed in Milwaukee. And he still is not a successful carpenter. All this time has passed, and it's 3 years, and he hasn't established himself. Golda recalls about coming to Milwaukee. The first thing she remembers seeing electrical lights for the first time and automobiles. She remembers, and this is one of the things I love sharing with my 3rd grade visitors, she remembers having ice cream for the first time as an 8-year-old. And, it's unbelievable. Can you imagine that your first time tasting ice cream would be when you're 8 years old? And she remembers going to school for the first time as an 8-year-old. And she starts as a kindergartner. She works her way up. And the part of the story that I love is by the time 2 years have passed, she's already started organizing within her school. She goes to 4th Street School, and she starts seeing that there's some issues at the time. And some of those issues, this is actually the first picture that was taken of Golda in America. She's quite small. And as she sees that there's issues, this is actually an article that was written in the Milwaukee Sentinel in 1910. And it says, children help poor in school. Little Sister Society is well organized. And it is. This is Golda's baby. She starts this organization because at that time, when you're going to a public school, you had to bring your own textbooks. And there are all sorts of children who don't have textbooks in school. So she organizes this grouping of girls, and they range in age from 8 to 14. So Golda is by no means the oldest. And actually, it's a statewide organization. There are 3 girls who are sending money in from Madison, and they put in 3 cents each week of their pocket change into a general fund. Now, some of the things that I love about this is that they start working really hard to make sure that the people that they're raising enough money, they're not getting enough from they're not getting enough just from their contributions. So they arrange like poetry readings. I imagine like if Golda was online today, she would be creating all sorts of online fundraisers and things. She creates talent shows, and they do these fundraisers to get these books. And at the first round, they get 15 books that they're able to distribute amongst children. And it says in the article, there is no careless distribution of the books. The club sees to it as many precautions as the Humane Society itself, that the books are distributed where they are needed. And it's my understanding that they would go out and casework these books. They would say, And I see that Rona Wolf is on the line. So they would say, Rona, are you going to study really hard? Are you going to make sure your little sister or brother doesn't steal this book and tear out pages? Are you going to make sure that this is the sort of book that is able to be handed down to future generations of people in your family or other families? So hopefully Rona would have said, or in this case, actually her grandma Rose, who was part of the society, would have said yes. But then they would go, and that wouldn't be quite enough. They would talk to Grandma Rose's parents to say, is there something you valued other than education? Is this what you really expect your kids to do? Are you making sure that they're getting the most out of their education? I can imagine nothing more terrifying than a 10 or 11-year-old coming to casework me on my spending habits in order to ensure that I'm getting a book for my kid. But this organization grew and grew. And in fact, in the article, it says that the first round they had 15 books, and in the next round they had 3 times as many. And this was really her first leadership experience. She says later in her memoir that this is the first time she saw her name in print, and she was hooked. So we are always delighted. And actually, I want to show you a picture of her class just so you get a sense of what it looks like. This is actually what 4th Street School looked like back then. This is very much what 4th Street School looks like today. Spoiler alert, it's now called Golda Meir School. In our next installment, we're going to look at Golda's rebellious youth. And again, spoiler, leave it with a little of a cliffhanger. She runs away from home, so it's quite dramatic. So join me on Thursday at 2 o'clock to get that next installment of Golda. I never actually gave her name as a small child. It was Goldie Mabowehz is her original name before she changes it. And I just love that name. But one of the challenges of that name is that it's spelled in like 15 different ways. So you can find a lot of different possible references to the Mabowehz family, but maybe not all entirely Golda and this particular family. So with that, thank you guys so much for joining me on this round of Museum Moments. I'll see you on Thursday. And if you've liked these or any of our past, please feel free to give us a donation. Have a great day.
Wait. Hello. I am here. Ellie, start on the right.